Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes, and this is Battle Language, and I'm joined by some guests, and we're going to have a discussion about the Dune board game. And that discussion topic for today is going to be the pros and cons of alliances. We heard some people were talking about alliances kind of ruin the game, which was a very provocative thing to say, and it got a lot of us talking. And we thought this would be a pretty good topic for Battle Language. So I'm joined by Jaded and Gary, and we're going to not necessarily take sides. I think just for the record, I'm pro alliances. I like them. A lot of people know that I've done a lot of videos about different alliances and just what makes them a good alliance, how you can leverage it effectively. And I'm not sure I would have done 20 of those if I was like, screw alliances, they suck. I think people would have been like, what's wrong with you? But I definitely understand the issue that some people have with it, especially there are people who just, when they play a competitive game, they like to, if they're going to be the winner, they like to be the only winner. And it's sort of they have the same issue with Cosmic Encounter, which very frequently ends with multiple people winning. And I've always been in team, I'd rather share the win than share the loss. But, when you can win, it does feel extra special. But, winning in solo in Dune is pretty tricky to pull off. But let's talk about what are some of those issues, the big issues that those who are not fans of alliances raise in this area. Don't all talk at once, but
I mean, it's not much for me to say, really. I'm a very pro-alliance kind of person, but I think there are certain times where I will just vehemently say, no, I'm not allying, or even reach a nexus and just break it and continue going solo, and not even requiring nexus cards. But I feel like a lot of times when I'm allied with someone, I try not to be an abusive ally, but I feel like I have a responsibility to not, tank my game and to, help them here and there and whatnot. And I just feel like when I'm solo, the game is a little bit less stressful, if that makes any sense. Because, if I lose, I'm not taking anyone down with me, so to speak.
That's fun.
fun to take somebody
And it
else down
also,
with you. I agree.
yeah, I guess if GJ is your ally, it's fun to take both of you down. But I find it's a lot easier to develop your game when you're solo. When you're allied, I feel like there's always the constant pressure to be going for a win or setting up next turn for the win. Whereas when you solo, you can just spend your spice on cards or budget some to ship and just collect spice or put your guys in a strategic spot or just do something that's not, and then we'll win because of that.
Yeah, I find actually that when I'm sticking it out solo, that there's more pressure on me, whether it's self-applied or externally applied, to stop the allies. I'm not able to just go off on my own and say, well, I'm just going to spend a couple of rounds getting better cards and getting my forces into a safe spot on the board where I don't have to worry about anything. It's like this alliance is going for the win, and somebody's got to go into Arakeen and stop this guy, and it just falls on the other players, um, I end up getting grouped into that. And whereas if I'm in an alliance, I actually have the opposite. I feel like, I think a lot of alliances form because they're just well positioned to go for a short term win. But that's usually one alliance. So like, all right, we're in 3 or we're already in 4 strongholds. But the other alliances are like, well, we can at least help each other position ourselves over the next couple of rounds. And maybe one of us does have to block a stronghold or go after a player to prevent the win, but it's not going to be totally on my shoulders to do it. And I've got somebody who can maybe, you pay for my shipment and I'll go down there and do this. Whereas if it were me, I'm totally on the hook to do it all. And I'm not getting any recompense or it's hard to me like well maybe somebody would bribe me, but more often than not they're they got their own problems. So it's interesting that that your experience has been the one side of that spectrum, but mine is usually the other side. What about you, Gary? You in the middle?
Yeah, kind of in the middle. Most of the time, I usually when an alliance or nexus comes up, I want to join an alliance. Like about 90% of the time, I want to say. I hardly ever go solo if I can, unless like the two people already or four people already allied, and the last guy is like just broken and the tanks. Then I'm not gonna ally with that person. Um, but I almost always try to ally because usually you get most of the time you guys are helping each other out or getting some kind of mutual benefit out of it. I find.
The thing about being solo, I think, is it makes it a lot easier to make deals and be more diplomatic and whatnot. Like, I mean, one example is like Atreides selling information. It's a lot easier for the Atreides to justify selling info to a faction that's alone because A, only one other person is going to benefit from that information, and B, a solo player is going to have a harder time going for a win themselves. Whereas if you sell information to, the Emperor BG Alliance, they might just leverage that directly into a win attempt that same turn. So it's a little bit less risky. And, if you want to throw fights or have fights thrown to you, it's just always easier to do it because there's less chance of the person leveraging that into a win, I think.
What I
Yeah.
will say is that for me, if a nexus occurs in the first, it won't be in the first round, but in the second or third, maybe even as early as the fourth round, I'm not excited about that prospect. Like a round two nexus to me is like, oh, it's too early. It's too early for alliances, and when one group forms an alliance, I'm like, all right, but nobody else. And then others are like, well, we'll ally too. And I think the Nexus cards help to mitigate that a little bit. But a lot of times there is a domino effect, when the two strongest players get into an alliance, the other players are like, well, maybe we should fall in it because we start thinking about what are the ally advantages and like, oh, if the emperor's asking me, I'm like, well, I'll get some, treachery cards out of it. That's nice. And Cho might be able to, pay for some of my battles or, give me a good card, or I can unload this worthless card and give it to them. But I'd much rather see players try to go for the solo win up until round five, and then you're like, all right, we need some alliances now because we've had some brutal setbacks and this is going to help to get everybody back on their feet. And so that's that. I will say that like I don't. Like we spent a lot of time setting up. I don't want the game to
Yeah.
end in the second round. I was like, for me, the perfect game is round five, round six, and they're like, all right, great, you did it. And whether it's a solo win or an alliance, then I feel like, okay, it was a good haul or a good struggle. Didn't end too early, didn't drag on too long. I was like, that's the sweet spot for me. But if we get into alliance in round two, then we're like, all right, this could go real quick. It may still end up going all the way to round 10, because there's a lot of just because you're in alliance doesn't mean either of you is going to have a good hand or good positioning. You might still not have any card knowledge, so you're still not ready to go for the win. And even then, stronghold blocking is still that's one of the biggest issues that any single player or alliance often faces. They can't get the access to go for the win. So you're looking at storm order and like the storm order is perfect now, but am I ready now? I'm like maybe I should go now because I'm going to be going. I'm going to be going first next round, and I don't want to go first, or I'm going to be going last, and then I won't be able to do what I want to do. So that's one of the big things for me. Like I'm definitely pro alliance, but not early alliance.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think a lot of the bad taste in people's mouths comes from like when a dominant alliance forms, like turn two, and just the entire game warps around stopping those two players. Like yeah, those two, for example.
Hmm.
But the
Just some
last
a
game
random
I
example.
played a game yesterday, and I was playing Atreides, allied BG turn two, and like the next 4 or 5 turns of just stronghold blocking us.
Yeah, I mean, even the strongest alliance is just can have a hard time with it, which is why, again, and this is more likely, I think, if the nexus happens after round 3, is you can, people have been trying to on their own get into a good position, and getting into 2 strongholds, while not easy, is often pretty manageable. You maybe you got into one without any trouble. When you go into your second one, that's when you're looking to get into a battle. And if you win the battle, you're like, great, now I'm in 2 strongholds. And if somebody else is in 2 strongholds and then the nexus occurs, you're like, great, we're a very natural fit. We're already in the 4 strongholds that can't block us. All we have to do is bolster our position. And, especially if like you're in one of these outlier strongholds, hopefully you already had a good number of forces there, so it's just easier for you to be like, all right, I'll ship into Carthage and move into Arakeen, and now I've got close to 10 forces in each. I'm in a great position, and and you already had 8 guys in Habanya, so if you just add more to Tabor, then great, we're in 4, we're strongly there. If we've got the cards and the right mix of knowledge and weapons defenses, then we've got it. So it's when you've got that board position already working, at least partially, if not all the way in your favor when the nexus occurs, then stronghold blocking is less of an issue, if one at all. So that's why I often see the board positioning being one of the biggest factors for who is going to ally with whom.
Oh, it's definitely, it's right up there with treachery cards in terms of the biggest determinant on what happens in the next 30 minutes. Like, I mean, just the other day, I was playing BG, and I was with an ECAS player for like a couple turns, and we were trying some things, and they just weren't working. And then he's completely down in the dumps. It's late in the game. I had like 5 forces to rub together in my reserves, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, Nexus, hey, Atreides offers me an alliance. Like, wait a minute, we could do this. People start attacking us, and he tells you what the cards are, and it's like, well, we just win these. There's no question about it. And what went from a game where it's like, I don't know how I'm going to win this. This is going to be guild stall out. With the right alliance, immediately turned into, we win this, and there's like literally only a traitor could stop us, just based on positioning and what sort of advantages you have too.
Yeah, I think that what's funny, because we had an offline sort of pre-discussion about this topic, and probably the biggest issue that was raised, it was less of a, here are the reasons why alliances, are not as fun or not as good in the game, more toward these specific alliances are just ones that were like, oh God, I hate to see this alliance in the game or be against it. Because we sort of talked about this as a lot of times people refer to this, people we know anyway, as the toxic alliance. And it's just, you've got the prescience, the voice. It's a really potent mix of things. But I was kind of amazed at how many other toxic alliances. They're like, well, what about BG and this faction and BG and that faction? What about Emperor and this particular faction? And so there's a lot of them, which is kind of the point of the Power Alliance series of videos, which is, they're all powerful, maybe overpowered, and certainly that's not universally true. There's a couple of alliances where like, these guys are not going to be dominating, but here's how they can make the best of the situation. But there are quite a few really powerful alliances that they really only need 1 or 2 things going for them to really leverage their advantages, or in particular their alliance advantages, and how that can really work out for them. I pulled out these 2 factions at first just because they have pretty potent alliance advantages, almost irrespective of who is on the other side of that alliance. And certainly these 2 together is pretty good too. With the Emperor, is you're basically, the biggest thing is if you're the ally to the Emperor, you're going to be getting some free treachery cards. The Emperor's usually sitting on a decent stack of spice, 10 spice, 12 spice, 50 spice, whatever, however things are going for him. And it's just a matter of you're like, hey, I can bid up to 10, which pretty much nobody else can. So I'll get that card for free. I'll get the next card for free. And then the emperor was like, oh, we'll let them buy that card so that I can get some more spice, and then I'll buy the other 2 cards or whatever. So, you're probably looking at arming somebody, and certain factions like Chom that can hold 5 cards and Harkonnen who can hold 8. Being allied to the emperor can be a big deal. With Chom, the trading of the cards, sometimes it just looks fairly innocuous, like, oh, they can trade a card, that's great. But if you're in a game with the tradies where they are keeping very strict notes and they're relying on that, and now you're mixing up things and they don't know who has what, and especially if you're, I'm the ally and I'm holding Trip to Kamat, I'd love to get that into your hands, Chom, and since you have 2 shields, why don't you give me one of those shields? And now I've got a snooper and a shield, and so those sorts of things can happen. And so these particular allies and other alliances really, they can put the other players on their back foot, and it can make you feel like, alliances are really bringing down what is otherwise a very enjoyable gaming experience. Like, I was much happier when Emperor was all by himself, and sure, he had a lot of spice, whatever, but he also had a lot of cheap heroes and worthless cards, so wasn't too worried about his capabilities. But now, now he's got the voice, or now he's got some prescience, so he's got card knowledge to go with it, and so the other players are just not happy about that. But a lot of it is just it's the luck of the draw, the luck of the circumstances. Even this alliance here, Atreides and Bene Gesserit, they don't always fare as well as you're expecting them to do, and it can just be like, well, Bene Gesserit never got a hold of a good card in order to leverage the voice as effectively as they wanted. And, we were always up against Harkonnen, who had too many unknown cards. So even Atreides' card knowledge didn't help out. So, the mix of it, it's not like, oh, this alliance is always going to make a crappy experience for everyone else. Certainly more likely to, but there's just so many factors in Dune that contribute to how a faction or an alliance is going to fare and their likelihood of winning, and you can't always account for everything.
Yeah, and the strength of an individual alliance, of course, depends on where they're each at. It's the age-old Atreides BG toxic alliance. The question has always been, how do you stop it? It's simple. You've got to stop the alliance before it ever even forms. You got to make sure that they don't have the spice, because that's their only weakness once they're allied. They're the kings of combat. So if they don't have the spice to dial and ship forces, they're kind of out of luck. And you look at an emperor allying with the Harkonnen on the second turn. Boom, the Harkonnen is now full of cards. But once they're full, I mean, how much does that Harkonnen player really need the emperor? Now they're going to go run off to someone like the BG. But consequently, you look at a player who doesn't have many treachery cards and they're allied to the BG, that alliance ability is really limited in terms of its value. So there's a lot of good combos, but everything is circumstantial to the state of the game, especially to a lot of things that aren't obvious. Everyone's going to know how many cards you have after bidding, but they might not know how much spice you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me that's part of the beauty of Dune, is that it's not just a simple it's just area control, just get your forces into that stronghold, and I've got more forces than you, so this battle is going to go my way. Maybe it's you could maybe dial higher, but we've got the trader mechanism that will upend 10% of your games right there, and you've got there's the mix of the treachery deck. There's a good number of weapons and defenses in there, but it's not the majority of the cards in that deck. And with 6 players, a lot of those good cards might be in somebody else's hand, and you might not know that. So that's another element that's mixed into the game that adds some nuance and depth to the gameplay. So there aren't a lot of certainties in the game, especially early on, and more so when you've added in like additional cards into the treachery deck or some other variants, like we're using tech tokens, or we're using leader skills or homeworlds. That adds more uncertainty to the game, which I find thematic. So I welcome those sorts of things. I don't like it when you're just like, okay, I know what your highest leader is here. I know that you don't have any treachery cards, and this is what you can dial. So that that's when you do have certainty. But the more X factors in the game, and how well you navigate it. So it's almost never like I have no information whatsoever. You always have a limited amount, and possibilities. And so sometimes you've got to make a bold move and hope that it works out. But sometimes you're making a very calculated guess. All right, I've seen 3 snoopers already, and it wasn't in your hand. So I think the odds are really good that you do not have a poison defense right now, and that's why I'm going to make my move. I'm moving my forces into your stronghold, and I think even with a mid-level leader and a moderate dial, I can overcome whatever you've got there. And so you could be in for a surprise, but I think a smart player, especially one who's familiar with the game, is familiar with the treachery deck. They know, all right, that's how many of these cards we have, and I know what we've seen. I know also, maybe I've got information another way from the Ixians or the Atreides, and so I'm factoring that in, and that's what the really good Dune players are leveraging in their game, and how they're able to pull off a win, whether it's solo or as part of an alliance. And when you have an ally, you also are kind of not necessarily doubling your information, but you're increasing your information, and you're increasing, your potential depth of treachery cards between you and spice that you can have at your disposal. And that's, again, feeding into why I like the alliances, is that I think it gives you some more possibilities, and it helps you connect more of the necessary puzzle pieces that it takes to pull off a win in the game. And I think at the end of the day, it's about winning, whether you're doing it by yourself or with somebody else. You're trying to win this game, and I don't necessarily say win by any and all means, but pretty much that's what I mean.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about alliances, as always, is I don't know what as always. It's a risk, fundamentally. Like 2 strong allies, and they're sharing a lot of info, and they're coordinating over many turns, can be like a force to be reckoned with. But, you could also be tying yourself to somebody else's ship and not realize they got like 7 hull breaches under the surface of the water. And now you're tied to a sinking ship, and you never know when the next nexus might come. It might be next turn. It might be 3 turns from now, equally likely. And then it's just a question of, well, how much information do you want to share? Do you want to play to your chest and be almost like you're not even allied at all, and just, tank the inefficiencies related to that? Or do you maybe try to help them out a little bit, buy them some cards, and maybe they can recover and bounce back, and maybe that even gets you the win? It's interesting, because no game is really similar in this kind of half cooperative, half totally free for all, and no 2 games are ever the same. Sometimes you get lots of allies switching every other turn, and sometimes it's just the same 3 for 7 turns until one gets the best of the other 4.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that I like about the game, is occasionally the fleeting nature of the alliances. Some people, they get into the alliance and they're all in on it. They're like, oh, this is great. I love to be allied with this faction. And so I had a situation where so-and-so was my ally, and they're like, "Hey, just want to let you know, Stilgar is your safe leader." I was like, "Oh, great! You know that because he was my traitor." So I'm like, "Okay, well, I know that if this alliance doesn't last, that I can't use Stilgar against you, but I can use him against everyone else." And they helped me buy a really good card, and the alliance ended up not lasting. So I was like, "Well, I've got this safe leader now, and I know that I know that anyone who fights him doesn't have to worry about traitors." And they used up some spice to help me get some good cards, and I'm in good position on the board. And when the Nexus occurred, I saw an opportunity to get into an alliance with someone who also had good board position and had an ally who had been a sugar daddy for them. So we both left behind our weaker allies who were less useful to us. And you have to in the back of your head when you form that alliance, you got to say, this is good right now. It might not be good for the whole game, and if we don't win soon enough, the circumstances may change and somebody else will be better. And we had a game, I think it was earlier this year, where I think it was either Harkonnen or BG, but they switched allies at every Nexus, and they're like, "Sorry, sorry, old ally, but had to better." And then it didn't work with the new ally, and they switched again, and they were just very, they were the most sought after player, and I think it was because it was the BG. The voice is always nice to have in your back
It's always
pocket.
the BG.
But we also knew that they had a couple of good cards, and which they'd been using effectively, but their ally kept letting them down, and we didn't win again. So they're in a good position. They keep winning their battles, and or nobody wants to battle them, and that didn't change. And so I found it highly entertaining that this is sort of going on, and nobody could make it work. And I don't think they ended up winning the game either. I think the VGA still ended up losing, which was all the more delicious for me.
I think the only thing less let below that entertainment value is seeing two allies forced to be together, but they don't want to be out
those are
anymore for like 3 turns or
beautiful.
so. It was like, I no more money for you. Okay, well, no more voice for you. And just watching people
It's
fight.
like watching an old married couple.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to use the voice. I was like, not in this battle. Well,
Actually, I'll be using the voice purposefully for something bad.
yeah, exactly. Like, oh no.
Oh,
Because
you
the
don't have a
VG
shield?
can do
You
that
must
to
play the
their
weapon. There
ally.
you go.
And so, I mean, I think newer players also don't realize that that's an option, and you don't automatically get the voice just because you're allied with them. It's basically they're the ones using the voice, and you just like, what do you want? What do you want me to target here? And same thing with prescience. And so I've seen players, telegraph ahead of time. I am dropping you at the next Nexus, which I suspect is very soon. And you're like, oh, okay, I see how this is going. And my usefulness has worn out, and I think that's great. For me, that is a definite feature of Dune. It is not a bug. It is something. It's part of the reasons why I was always in the camp of deals are never binding. It's because I like betraying the other players at the table. And so I've grown, accustomed to the we have that safety net. If he said he'd do that, and I'm doing this, and it's don't have to worry about that. But you do have to worry about what's that next spice card going to be. And I was like, I really need one more round of you helping me get into position, and don't dump me. I need some assurances here. Pay for this card. Let me save my money for revival, that sort of thing, so that that you can trust them for at least one more round. Like, I think we can do it if I get the right card. And like, did you get it? I was like, sort of,
Maybe.
not really.
I got a cool on.
So I mean, I think that I think for most players, if you're playing Dune and you're a fan of Dune, I think I suspect most players will fall on the side of I'm glad that their alliance is in the game, and I'm fine with the alliance win. And I think again, like long-time players, I think their expectation is if I'm winning this game, it's probably with an ally. I do like to go for the win solo if I can get all of the stars to align. It's a tougher order to try to get that pulled off when it's when you're by yourself, but because at least within alliance there's one fewer player that you have to worry about in the short term. Probably should continue to worry about them in the long term, as we've alluded to. But I think that in fact, I haven't really interacted. I've never played with somebody who was like, "Boo, alliances. We never play with alliances." I haven't heard that. I think my experience has been like, "Oh, good," but I do know other people who are also in the camp of round 2 alliance nexus. No, like let's all agree to not get into an alliance, and said like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Maybe round 3 is not too early, but I do like to see somebody try to go for it. I like to just use that time to make myself a more attractive ally. I want to get another card, and hopefully it's good. I want to get into 2 strongholds if I can, and I want to try to get some card knowledge. So maybe I'm probing and getting into a battle. Like, all right, I got to get into this battle to get rid of this cheap hero and this Balisat, so that I can make space in my hand for some better cards. And I'm bluffing with this move into Carthag so that I can find out, all right, do you have, what weapons do you have, or do you have a defense here? That's for me the useful sorts of stuff to do in rounds 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes you're giving other people card knowledge too, which is that's the downside. It's like, all right, everybody knows you have that poison weapon, or everybody knows you don't have a snooper, or I guess we think you didn't play one, but we're like, well, we know you only have 2 cards, and we know what one of them is, so you definitely don't have the defense. So we'll see how many bids you win in the next round, if any, and if we can prevent you from getting any, then this could be the time to strike. We're like, you can't defend, and if you try to stronghold block, or not stronghold block, but try to get in on a stronghold where I am, I'm not too worried about that unless you can bring a lot of forces to bear, and that's the one thing that even a good hand can't necessarily overcome all the time.
Yeah. Talking about more solo stuff, one of my favorite variants I think is probably the Sand Trout card, because that really helps shake up alliances a lot and cause a little more solo wins to happen.
Yeah, me too. I mean, for somebody who loves alliances so much, I do love that Sand Trout card, because I like how it shakes up. It'll shake up a round, and a lot of times it's more than one round, because you could go another few before you get another nexus. But I love that dynamic where you're like, oh, okay, we had one round where we were in an alliance, and we helped each other get position, but now we're not in an alliance, and so does somebody say, you know what, maybe I can pull off this win by myself, or I know that my ally doesn't have any defenses because he told me, so I'm just gonna go in here and bump him out of that stronghold, and that's, I love that kind of gameplay where I'm taking full advantage of this fact. You told me Stilgar is safe leader, and or I know that he's your traitor, so I'm going to come in here with Chani and thump you and take over. I'm like, I want Carthag so that I can get the 2 spice and whatever else is going on. So that I enjoy. I'm with you, Gary. I like having that Sand Trout in the game. And kind of what's fun is, sometimes you've got also that double spice blow, which can be just a great distraction. I mean, when there's 24 spice sitting there and Ciel goes south all of a sudden, and people are like, I don't want a stronghold block this round. I want to go down there and get that spice. And and then you're like, oh, this maybe opens up some opportunities here. That's usually how Greg wins. Greg wins because we're all too greedy for spice, and Greg is like, well, if you guys aren't going to be in these strongholds, I'm going to go in and see if I can't win this game. So that sand trout, it can be a very interesting development. So I highly recommend everybody get that card, get it in their decks because it's fun to shake up the alliance.
Yeah, I mean, it's exceptionally funny when you see that, like, unshakable alliance. It seems like they can't be touched. They're just waiting for the right turn to go for it. And then the sand trout pops up, and you find out very quickly if one of those factions was carrying more of the weight than the other one. And then it's like, oh no, my BG, I can't do anything without my BG.
My crutch.
And then they just get put in the dirt.
Yeah, I think that's. I think we might want to make another one. So get double sand trouts in the deck. No, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, one is enough. One's too many.
Yeah, maybe one that always cancels the alliances, even if a worm comes up after or before.
Yeah. Well, we not to get too far out in front, but we may have something that has a similar sort of effect on the game. So we'll be sure to talk about it in more specifics when we're allowed to. But I do like it's something different, but with a similar aesthetic in the how it affects the game. But yeah, I think let us know in the comments if first of all, are you pro alliance, anti alliance, and by anti alliance I mean like you're like, no, I never want to be in an alliance, or like I hate to just win an alliance, I only do it just so that I'm not a loser, or whatever your justification is. But also why, what is it why do you like alliances so much, or why do you eschew them if you do, and if there's a particular alliance that just fills you with dread, if you see it in the game and you are not in that alliance, and anything else that we did not cover here in our pros and cons of the alliance game. Again, I mean, after our discussion, I didn't change my mind. I do like the alliances, and I would rather win in an alliance than lose unallied or whatever state I'm in. Yeah, I think we haven't mentioned it, but the probably the most gratifying win is Bene Gesserit when they have predicted their ally, and the two of them win in the round predicted, and you're like, I hate to break this to you, Atreides, but I predicted you in round 3. So
yeah, we did not win.
You should not have. You should have not have formed a nexus in round 2, because all I did was you played into my hands, and that should be anybody who gets into an alliance with the Bene Gesserit should beware. You should be like, when you should ask them, is this the round? Should we go for it? You think we're ready? And when they say yes, if they don't even hesitate, you're like, no. This is definitely, I'm throwing this battle.
I had that happen to me in person once as the non-BG player, and oof, it almost came to blows. You did what?
Yeah, I think it's that's why I always predict round 5. I'm like, let's get a couple of rounds in, and I don't want to get into an alliance with one player and then break it and get into it with my predicted player. That's how I like to maneuver things. So maybe round 6, but. Yeah, so that's what I think we may revisit this with as we get some responses, especially if some of the other of our battle language regulars, if they're like, what? Like, how dare you?
They said what?
Yeah. Happy to get into a subsequent discussion, and maybe depending on what the commentary is, we might say, yeah, let's respond to that. But this was a pretty good one. So thanks for watching, and again, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we will hopefully see you again soon.